Hey guys, I'm back with the next part 2 in-depth series episode number 24. So this is the second part, and like I said, sorry it wasn't with the first one, but the first recording of this, the file size was simply too large to upload, and I do feel like I could have kind of condensed some things and maybe added to some clay models or whatever, so maybe it's better that I just kind of take a day or two to, regroup my thoughts as to this part, which is the unofficial sets. Part 1 was the potential set starters, and now this part is unofficial sets again, which are characters that I've kind of sculpted from either the same game or, with a set in mind, but never actually evolved it into a legit set. So with that said, I'm going to start with this small Samus. So this little Samus is probably one of my favorite clay models that I've ever made, and it's not so much because of the great amount of detail or how accurate it may or may not be, but it's simply because I remember a long time ago when I was sculpting this, which it was around 2007. Just one night, kind of random, I just wanted to make a Samus, and for around this time, to make a Samus just this well, with all kind of the little black lines in there for detail, the little green inside of the black lines. Especially to make one this small. It's just a really nice kind of small, compact Samus. Like I said, I know there's not a lot of detail to it, but for the time that I sculpted this, and one of those, again, kind of um, obscure cases where the kind of lack of detail makes it look better. Because I've done other Samuses that I put like way too much detail on it, just really detracts from the sculpt itself. So just to have a Samus this nice, I really like it, and it's a really nice clay model. But it would be some time before I made any other kind of Metroid clay models with the Samus in mind, because after I made this one, I liked it so much that I kind of said to myself, hey, it would be cool to sculpt more characters for Metroid. Well, there aren't really a whole lot of human characters, so that made me go on to kind of the monsters and stuff. Um, After this Samus, Ridley was obviously the next thing in mind, and I'm going to say maybe a year or so later. Maybe it was actually maybe 6 months later. If you guys remember back to my Epic Metroid in-depth series episode where I showed off that Ridley, like the purple one that was kind of flat, that one I originally said was a prototype like trophy statue figure. But I don't know why I necessarily said that. I must have just forgotten. But now that I kind of think about it, that Ridley was actually supposed to be a Ridley to accompany the Samus in a small kind of Samus Ridley like set of two. But I really didn't like it. I didn't think it was good enough to be with the Samus, so I kind of just scrapped it, and that's probably why I said it was just a trophy model, because the trophy model set didn't really go too well considering there were two models that were scrapped anyway. So that's what was up with that Ridley. And then years later, compared to when the Samus was sculpted, so around 2000, I'm gonna say probably 2011 or so, whenever Video Game Clay Figure Model 6 was put on, which I think was 2011, I ended up making this Ridley, which is definitely to the caliber of this Samus, maybe even better. I did review, well, this Samus and this Ridley before, but just I don't even know how I got a clay model to look this good. I mean, even nowadays when I sculpt, just the amount of detail and just almost, now that I think about it, effortless detail. When I was sculpting this way back, um, 2 years ago, I remember, kind of spending a good like 3 hours or 4 hours, kind of, a decent chunk of the day just sculpting this. But what I did was I made it in part and then glued them all together. But the way I was able to glue them all together so that they actually fit into, each component, the way the body acts as kind of, the centerpiece for all the parts you kind of get glued onto, the detail that didn't get smudged, like all these little spikes on, his back and the rings on his tail, and the wings, which are super thin, but I was still able to manage to get them, in there and very on character. It's just a really great Ridley. So together, that's where these two guys kind of came from. And after I made that Ridley, kind of like I said with the Samus, I wanted to make the Ridley. Finally made the Ridley. After the Ridley, I said to myself, well, I want to make a Kraid and a Mother Brain. I wanted to kind of have the trifecta of Metroid enemies, and then Samus as kind of a set, but again, it kind of never developed because I never got around to sculpting Kraid or Mother Brain. And these two together, they were sculpted so far apart, I can't really consider them a set. So that's what's going on with them. And perhaps I should have zoomed out a little bit more. I'm zoomed out all the way. Kind of fix my camera. Alright, so that's what's up with them. Kind of put them to the side. Been doing some weird things here with the camera, just, like in the first part, Mario and Yoshi were to the side. So that's what was up with that. Alright, so these next guys are really kind of obscure. And it's a set that, I might just end up making this video 3 parts because I don't really want to rush myself, and I feel like I'm going to talk for another like 10 minutes, or 5 minutes, to get 10 minutes. So, um, these next 3 characters are actually probably one of the most obscure things I've ever sculpted, and a long time ago, these were made a long time ago. It's a set of Supersonic, Shadow, and Metal Sonic from Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, of all things. So it's kind of really weird because I remember one day I just decided to kind of sculpt clay, and like I said back then, which these were made, I'm going to say probably I want to say around 2007, so the same time that I made this awesome Samus, I was making these really obscure Sonic characters too. Well, not obscure in the sense that they're obscure characters, but obscure in the sense that, well, we'll get into that. So, I just decided one day that I wanted to sculpt, which was completely normal back then, and I made these 3 guys because for some reason Sonic Adventure 2 Battle was on my mind, and I'm like, hey, why not make a Super Sonic from Sonic Adventure 2? So that's what I did with this Sonic, probably being one of the least on character Super Sonics I've made, at least in the back spikes, because he only has 4, so I'm going to assume it better have been a time, which I think it was, where I hadn't sculpted Sonic in such a long stretch, and I naturally forgot that he had 6 spikes, so I made him with 4, really weird. And it's weird, too, because I do remember I was using, if not using SA2 artwork, had SA2 in mind, because as we get into Shadow, I'm like, oh, well, Supersonic is an SA2, so it'd be cool to make a Super Shadow as well. But for some reason, Sonic doesn't have his SA2 soap shoes, so I don't really know what was going on with that. Probably because of the obscurity with the spikes, the shoes kind of got lost in that sense too. So that was Sonic. Shadow, which again, he's just a decent average Shadow, especially for the time. He only has 4 spikes as well, because again, I had that spike deficiency, I guess. And he doesn't really have a whole lot of noticeable detail on him or anything. And his gloves are kind of all wrong and stuff. I mean, it's a Sonic and a Shadow. But this is a really weird part, is this Metal Sonic. And that's because it's Metal Sonic. Super Sonic and Super Shadow I can see because, okay, they were in the game, the final boss. But then for some reason, which I still think this now, and this is probably what I thought back then, that Metal Sonic in the multiplayer of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle was kind of odd. I don't know, just because he wasn't in the game at all, and the rest of the characters were in the game in some way, shape, or form, like in the main story, but Metal Sonic really wasn't. So I kind of, I guess, thought it was cool enough to kind of sculpt him be Super Sonic, Super Shadow, and then Metal Sonic, because I guess they're cool, the 3 of them. Yeah, so I guess that's why I wanted to make him, and I did, and he's really just, again, typical Metal Sonic for the era, but really off model, because the ears are wrong, the spikes are really kind of condensed, and his back booster thing is really off. His fingers kind of broke off because they were really thin, and he's just all blue, really. There's no real detail aside from, like, I mean, like, the gray of his arms, but his legs should be gray, which they're not. And, yeah, I mean, I could go on all day about how inaccurate this is, but the whole point about why this was a set is because I sculpted all 3 of these on the same day with Sonic Adventure 2 Battle in mind, so I kind of considered them a mini set, even though, again, the fact that they don't really go together and the fact that this is a really weird set to have sculpted to begin with, with the 3 of them like they are. I thought that was kind of obscure and why it should be considered an unofficial set. So, pretty much, we're still continuing on. I'm going to probably end this now and then conclude in the next part 3. So, yeah, more unofficial sets to follow.